What's up, everyone? My name is Lilo, and you are listening to Delayed Reaction, a movie review podcast hosted by me, where I essentially go and watch movies. You might be wondering, interesting, movie review podcast. Why is that? Well, this is my creative outlet. It's kind of the hobby that I felt like I wanted to do. And in all honesty, I know I'm doing something kind of cool here because when I look through my episode list of movies, I kind of smile a little bit. Not gonna lie. Okay, in this episode, we are talking about one of my absolute favorite movies that I had to put on this list because I can't not include this movie in any kind of movie review list. So today we're talking about John Wick. The original John Wick released in 2014 with such a massive cast with Keanu Reeves, Lance Reddick, Willem Dafoe, Alfie Allen, Ian McShane, Michael Nyqvist, and Dean Winters, who you would know as Mayhem from the Allstate commercials, or if you're a 30 Rock nerd, was Tina Fey's on again, off again boyfriend. He's pretty great. And of course, Willem Dafoe, like I said, who plays Willem Dafoe with a gun. So, there's that. But I truly loved this movie, and I think it's because, like, if we're gonna get kind of deep, right? First of all, before we dive too deep, let this be your spoiler warning. If you haven't seen John Wick, there will be spoilers ahead. If you haven't seen John Wick and you're listening to this podcast, I suggest you pause this podcast and you immediately go watch John Wick. Just right now. You hit pause and you go watch that movie. Why are you still listening to this? You better be watching the movie and listening to me rant on about how you should be watching this movie right now. Okay, you done now? Even better. Let's dive in. This movie, like I said, is one of my absolute favorite movies. And I think so, okay, growing up, here's a little bit of like recipe blog moment. So just bear with me for just a second. So when I was a kid, my dad would watch movies. He would get absolutely just so animated anytime someone gets revenge, basically, or like anytime the good guy gets to really just take it to the bad guy. Not even like, defeating the bad guy, but just really sticking it to the bad guy. And this movie absolutely embodies that. And I think it really kind of hit a bunch of nerves because, trigger warning, the dog does die. And that is the entire motivation for the main character, John Wick. And honest to God, 1000% relatable, right? So, premise goes like this: John Wick, he's you see him at the start and he's just completely beat up, turns to his phone, watches an old movie of him and his wife. Come to find out that his wife dies. I think it's of cancer, but I don't remember them saying specifically. Anyway, as a last gift from her to him was a dog so that he doesn't have to grieve alone. Just a wonderful moment where, he has the dog and the dog is adorable and he's just loving the dog. And then, of course he meets some mobster kid well, when it comes out, it looks like it's just some kid and it's like this one random act of violence. Well, not even random, but it's like an odd follow through on violence. I don't know. But anyway, this kid breaks into John Wick's house and robs him, steals this beautiful Mustang, and kills the dog. Okay. Immediately, like, the audience is bought in. You did such a horrible thing to that dog. The audience is fully behind Keanu Reeves at this point. The rest of the movie is essentially him laying waste to a Russian mafia, who is run by Michael Nyqvist, whose character's name is Vigo, and turns out that the kid that killed John Wick's dog is his son. So the rest of the movie talks about how it does this cool thing where it lays the backstory of John Wick's legacy in this assassin's world on top of current events of him being just completely unstoppable. And it has given rise to the concept of being called the Baba Yaga, which is like the boogeyman who comes and takes evil, or kid comes and takes naughty kids. And John Wick is the Baba Yaga. And that sets the entire stage. So he essentially mows through this entire mafia, making his way video game style from the bottom of this thing to the very top, trying to get to Vigo, the kid, who's played by Alfie Allen. Short story long, he wins. He ends up killing Vigo and his son, and I think just about every person that gets thrown his way throughout the movie. What's fun about this movie is that it sets up this, it reveals this whole lore, right? So there's this there's this scene where, and I can only, like, the best way that I can kind of relate it is like Harry Potter, right? Except it's done through one actor as opposed through multiple actors. So it's this Harry Potter sequence where um, John Wick, instead of getting a key to Gringotts, grabs the hammer and smashes open his own vault and reveals a treasure trove of gold coins and weapons. Okay. There's this scene where Vigo sends this small army of people into his house, and John goes through systematically eliminating all of them within the house. And at the end of that, he sits down, makes a phone call, and he says, "I'd like to make a dinner reservation for 12." And the next scene cuts over, and it's this cleanup crew. And they come clean his house, and it's the wildest thing because it's such a nonchalant call, and it's such a nonchalant crew. John Wick hands the main dude like a stack of these gold coins, and they clean up all of the bodies from this room or from this house, clean up any traces of them whatsoever. And even prior to him making that call, there's this scene where he's finished eliminating these dudes, and he gets a knock on the door, and the camera angle shows the frosted glass of his front door, and there's red and blue lights flashing. And like, oh great, here comes the cops, because he's basically living in like a suburban neighborhood. So walks up, opens the door, there's this police officer there, and you see him kind of like lean in, looks through the door. He's like, "Evening, John." And John Wick says, "Evening, Jimmy." Which, that alone, just like, cop's name is Jimmy. Come on. And Jimmy the cop says, "You working again?" And John Wick, nonplussed, is like, "I'm just trying to work through some things." And the cop's like, "Okay. Good night, John." John says, "Night, Jimmy." And closes the door. And that's the end of the scene. And you're like, oh, okay, this is something special. But so from all of that, right, it establishes this entire Assassin's world where there's like this whole hotel system which is built around assassins. And like, he walks up, and Lance Reddick is the concierge or the front desk guy. Glorious, glorious actor, by the way. Rest in peace, Lance Reddick. His role gets far bigger as the movies go on, because of course there are 4 of these movies, but Lance Reddick's character gets bigger throughout the movies. Anyway, John Wick slides 1 coin to him and is like, "I'd like, I'd like a room for the night." It becomes like this full service 5-star hotel that caters to like every need of the assassins, with the one rule of you can't conduct business on the continental grounds, which comes into play later. So that made me wonder, as I'm watching this through again for like the 5th time, what is the exchange rate for these coins, right? Like, he gave a stack of coins. I don't know how many there were. It was hard to tell to this dude for cleaning up the mob guys, but he only slides one coin for a room at the Continental and gets full service. Like what is the exchange rate here? Like if we were to go like assassin coins to not to like US dollars, what is that rate? Is like one assassin coin is like 1,000 US bucks? Because that would make sense. That seems appropriate to me. And then there's one scene out of this entire movie that I found kind of unbelievable. And it's from like once John is in the Continental, he's sitting in his room in his suit, and the camera angle shows that he had room service delivered, and this room service, there's like a couple plates, and it looks like there's a steak of some kind that has been pretty much cleaned off, right? But I can't tell if it's like a porterhouse or like a T-bone steak. In some angles, and it might just be because of the distance, but in some angles, it kind of looks like it's a tomahawk steak. Like maybe John Wick really just loves to go crazy on steak before he goes on a murder spree, right? He finishes off this entire meal, and it looks like he's just sitting there in it, eating this in his perfectly tailored suit. And I'm like, how can you possibly look that comfortable after eating that dinner in that outfit? Like that alone does not add up to me. Like I just don't believe that part. Everything else in the movie, fine. That scene, I don't believe it. There's this other couple of scenes, right, where it shows that John Wick is a man of focus, which is said in the movie. Like, if you are a target of John Wick, it's game over. If you are not a target, you're good to go. There's a scene where he walks into a nightclub and there's this huge bouncer. And the angle that they shoot this at is great because the angle is top down. So it's like this 45-degree angle shot from the top towards the ground, and it's of the bouncer's face. And out of the shadow comes the gun barrel in John Wick's face, and he's like, I can't remember the bouncer's name. He's like, "Evening, so and so," and the guy's like, "Ah, Mr. Vic, you working again?" John Wick completely ignores that comment, and he's like, "You look well. Have you lost weight?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, I lost however many kilos." And John's like, "Why don't you take the night off?" And the guy just is like, "Great," walks away. Perfect scene. And then from there, John Wick goes through, does his business, and you're just like, wow, lucky night for that bouncer guy. There is another scene within that nightclub where the son, what is his name? Hold on, let me see. Oh, Yosef. Yosef, played by Alfie Allen, runs past these glass barriers, and John Wick has, at this rate, literally has like a 90% hit rate for his shots, and misses him through three of these panels, and you're just like, how though? Like, I don't think that's quite how that works, but maybe it's bulletproof glass, but it reacts in a way that it looks like it's regular glass. So I don't know. As the movie progresses, right, he ends up finally catching Yosef at the end, and he, oh no, wait, sorry, let me back up just a couple steps. So as Yosef runs out of this club, John Wick had killed his one of his body guys, stole his phone. Yosef calls that guy's phone, and he's like, "Where are you? Where are you?" And John Wick's like, "Victor is dead." And then he turns it around because at the beginning of the movie, Yosef says everything has a price to John Wick before everything goes down. And John Wick threateningly turns that back on him and says, "Everything has a price," and hangs up. And like you can see Yosef's face and demeanor just completely changed from one of like obstinance to just abject terror. And it's wonderfully done. So then last, let's see, there's a couple other things that I noticed throughout the movie. There's one scene towards the end before he catches Yosef where it's an entire like Deus Ex Machina situation where just you see John walking and he pushes a button and a bunch of cars explode in this warehouse where Yosef is staying. And you like you can imagine that you are in this warehouse, you hear these explosions, like you run away from the explosions. Like, why would you go towards them knowing that you're being chased by the Baba Yaga? So anyway, they run downstairs, and of course, he's there, because he just blew up these cars. Like that just seemed like an odd choice, but for story purposes, I get it. There's a moderate theme of cars in this movie, where cars kind of become a moniker of John Wick. And so, he starts off with this Mustang, which I think is a Mustang Mach 1, 69 Mach 1, which is gorgeous, by the way. That gets stolen. It's never seen again. He gets a new car, which I believe is an old Charger. I don't know the year, but it's an old Charger. Again, beautiful car. Just loud, throaty, and amazing vehicle. And then towards the later third of the movie, the Continental gives him a new Charger, which absolutely is product placement for, Dodge. But I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, okay. I like the old one better. Like the new one's okay. The new one's kind of cool, but the old one just had this personality to it where you're like, oh, okay. This is John Wick's car. But with the new Charger, you're like, it looks like it could be probably a cop car. And then all of a sudden, it's not a cop car and it's the Baba Yaga instead. Okay. And then at the end, at the very end of the movie, it brings you back to the beginning of the movie. This whole full circle moment. John Wick winds up in front of what can only be described as a vet clinic ex machina. Just out of the, like, I don't even know how this happens. He literally just like stops a beat up car. He stumbles out of the vehicle and is at an animal hospital. And so he breaks his way in, and since it's a hospital, he's able to patch himself up. And but he's also surrounded by like a ton of dogs. And you're like, oh, that's kind of poignant. And out of these, I don't know, dozen dogs, he picks one totally random dog. And like, I know for me, I'm like, how did you pick this one random dog? Like it just, there's so many other ones that you could have chosen from, but this is the one that you picked. Okay, that's fine. It's adorable. I think the dog is super cute. Does make some appearances in later movies. I think I saw someone somewhere on the internet say that that dog had a tag that said he was marked for being put to sleep or something like that, which is supposed to be analogous to John Wick being like at the end of his career slash life thing. I don't know, some odd connection like that. But yeah, just how did he pick the dog? I would like to know that. So now that I have gushed about this movie, you can well imagine that I'm going to give this movie a 5 out of 5. This is one of my absolute all-time favorite movies, a masterpiece from start to finish, except for that steak scene, which is wildly unbelievable. But this movie needs to be on everyone's watch list just at least once, right? Like you owe it to yourself to at least watch John Wick once. You could do without the sequels, and I'll go over those in future episodes, but the first one, must watch. Full stop. As always, let me know what your thoughts were. Tell me if I missed anything cool or if you have any fun facts about the movie. Drop those in the comments. And yeah, thanks so much for listening. Until next time.